Hey, Evan from HoppermusicWorks. Recently, I made some new scale worksheets, which are available on my website. In this video series, we will be going more in depth as to how I use them with my students. Here's the scale worksheet for the major scale. When I hand this to a student for the first time, I'll briefly go over those mode names, how to pronounce them. Like Phrygian's a pretty tough one. It's not Phrygian or Phrygian. It's good to know how to pronounce each name. We'll go over why they exist, a little bit about how you can use them. But in the beginning, we're mainly going to be looking at the Ionian mode, which is commonly known as the major scale. So let's focus in on the Ionian mode. Where are we going to place this on the fretboard? I like to teach in the key of G major because I feel like it fits really well over the fretboard. And here is how it sounds. First, we'll need to find the third fret on the low E string. This is a G. This corresponds to the very first blue dot with the bold outline. Our first note is also known as the root note of the scale. And as we're reading the scale worksheet, the next note that we're going to play will be still on the low E string and the one directly to the right of the first root note. And this is in the 5th fret on the low E string. It's also known as an A. The next note will move up another 2 frets to the 7th fret. This is known as our B. Now, if we want to play the next note, we are going to move up to the next string to do that. Now, this method is called the 3-note per string method. So we play exactly 3 notes on every string, and then we move to the next string in the sequence to go higher into the scale until we run out of strings. So if we look at that A string, we'll see that those 3 notes are lined up just as they were on the low E string. In that 3rd fret, the 5th fret, and the 7th fret. These notes are known as C, D, and E. And as we move on to the D string, we'll see that it changes slightly. The first note actually starts on the 4th fret, and this is an F sharp. Then we go up to a G. You may have noticed that I stopped on this note when I played the example of what the major scale sounds like, and there's a good reason for that. This is our first octave. You'll also notice on the worksheet that this dot has a bold outline as well. Each one of those bold outlined dots is the octave in the mode shape. This is the first milestone, going from the root to the first octave. You hear every note in the scale, and you also hear how it resolves. This is where the lesson would usually conclude when I introduce the major scale for the first time. Going from the root to the octave provides a really good practice throughout the week for the student, even if you need just one finger to play through the scale for the first couple of times. That helps you get used to where you're placing your finger. But most importantly, you want to be listening to how that scale sounds. Because if you're not paying attention to that, when you make a mistake, you won't even realize it. When you come back for your lesson, you may be memorizing something that is incorrect. Even though guitar is very shape-based, and we're going to use a lot of shapes when learning the guitar to memorize things much faster, we still really want to focus in on what's happening to any changes and listening to what sound that makes. So this helps prevent any mistakes in the future, and always use the scale worksheet to reference if you're playing those notes right. Because if I were to play through the scale and make a mistake, I want to be able to hear that that note was wrong, but then I can reference the sheet and say, oh, this actually needed to be 1 fret higher. That sounds much better. It sounds correct. That's why going through the first octave and again hearing all of those 7 notes is really great. So let me show you an example of how to practice this scale throughout the week. This is where we're going to want to use a metronome. This is going to keep you consistent, and it's going to push you, which is going to help you improve. Be sure to start out slow. I suggest starting at 60 beats per minute and playing 1 note on every beat. This means you have 1 second to play each note of the scale. And once you've made it all the way up the first octave and you've gotten it comfortable with that metronome, go back down, starting on that first octave and working down to the root. And then you can combine those two together, ascending the scale up to the first octave and then immediately just going right back down. You could repeat that octave at the top. That would sound like this. Or you can just go right back down when you hit that octave at the top. It's a subtle difference, but it can definitely change how the practice feels. As this becomes more comfortable, push yourself by speeding up the metronome. I suggest going in 5 BPM increments at a time. So this is how I introduce my students to the major scale. Again, playing that first octave, you can hear how it sounds and you begin to see how everything is shaping up. In the next video, we're going to continue on and show where to go next. If you enjoyed this lesson and you would like to take lessons from me, I do offer online lessons. We can do Zoom, FaceTime, Skype, Google Hangouts, really any free video service. I will have a link to my website that has pricing information, and you can email me at hoppermusicworks@gmail.com if you have any questions. See you in the next video.